Guys, that's why you frog fish during the spawn right there. It's spawn, post-spawn. You know, you really don't know. A lot of times you get on these bodies of water, especially if you're not familiar with it, and you're not 100% sure at what stage or how far along they're in the spawn. So what do? You need a bait that'll catch spawners and will catch those post-spawners, plus get big bite. And for me, that's oftentimes with topwater. And certain lakes, certain situations, there's no better topwater to me than a frog. You know, you can get it in and around a lot of cover, you can skip it, it will entice a big one to bite if you get it around it, and you can cover water with it. So it's a great way to get started whenever you're just not 100% sure what stage of the spawn they're in, because it will catch different stages of fish. If you pitch that frog up there on a bedding bass, you know, when fish are spawning, their whole goal is to protect that nest. So if you throw a frog up there and they see that frog come off the bank, they're not gonna allow that to go over top of their bed, so you're gonna get that fish to bite. And what I mean by fish that are further along in the spawn, sometimes when those fish are done spawning, they'll still hang around that shallow cover, protect their fry, but they're not actively guarding the nest. You also need a bait that'll catch those fish. This bait will do that. For me, that's a really cool way to do it, because oftentimes, until you get really dialed in, you need a bait that'll catch both. And you need to be able to present it into shallow water. Most of the time, you know, I would say 90% of the country, fish spawn really, really shallow. They need sunlight to spawn. So if you're here, we're in stained, you know, kind of stained to muddy water. It's not really muddy, but fish are gonna spawn really shallow. So you need a bait that you can fish in that shallow water. And really a topwater, there's no better bait than a topwater that will fish well in that shallow water. And just like that, I threw it over a limb, pull it right through that limb, it lands on the water. And the other thing too about fishing for spawning fish, if you've ever fished for a fish that's up on a nest or up on a bed that you can see, oftentimes leaving that bait there a good bit of time is what triggers that fish to bite. So if I throw a swim jig up there, if I throw anything that's moving, it's gonna come through that bed really fast. If that's a really active fish or a fish that hasn't been messed with at all, sure, it may grab it. But the cool thing about a frog is if I throw it to a spot like the corner of that grass right there where I think there might be a fish that's spawning, I can just kill that frog for a second. And then I can twitch it a couple times and really not move it very much, but impart some action and aggravate that fish enough that he may bite it, or at the very least, may show theirself. Guys, that's why you frog fish during the spawn right there. If you're not sure what stage of spawn they're at, throw a topwater, throw a frog. You'll get big bites, you get a lot more bites. Hope this helps you catch more fish.